Is Brexit a loss of sovereignty or a gaining of new rights?
It's a gaining of sovereignty, obviously, by definition.
As you know, I've not been someone who's been too outspoken on this question over the years. I made it quite clear at the time that the original vote took place that I was opposed to the idea of leaving the European Union. Not because I believe the European Union is a pan-European institution of democratic states.
Content over everything!
On the contrary, many of the arguments by Brexiteers about the undemocratic nature of the European Union are true. However, the central question, in my opinion, is in what trajectory is the world moving, or do I want it to move towards? And is a larger state a better entity from the point of view of transformation towards the world I would like to see? And I tend to think that that was the case, and that's why I argued the case for remaining inside the European Union, despite the fact that the European Union is not an alliance of democratic countries reflecting the will of the people to administer their own affairs. It's not what it is. The European Union is an organisation led by France and Germany, two most powerful states in Europe, which on the one side served after the Second World War as a sort of economic bulwark against so-called communism, and on the other represents the dominance of two powers, and within those two powers of the companies that control those countries over the European Union as a whole. And so, yes, I was sympathetic to the fact that there is justified, verifiably justified criticism of the European Union. Take, for example, the treatment by the French and German banks and the institutions that dominate Europe over Greece, or even for that matter Portugal, Ireland and Spain. Over the last 10 years, since the economic crisis of 2007, 2008, or 2008-9, when the actual economy retracted, went into decline. And the way Greece was treated clearly shows this is not an institution that is designed to defend the rights, the living standards of the mass of people in any country in the European Union. On the other side, there are certain benefits. The freedom to move inside Europe, as long as it existed, and it doesn't exist, in the continent of Europe, it no longer exists. There is no freedom of movement in Europe anymore. Because after the migration crisis over the last 2 years, where people have arrived from Syria, Pakistan, and North Africa, particularly through Turkey, border controls were imposed in various European Union member countries. And in the name of terrorism, or fighting terrorism, they also imposed border controls in a number of European countries. And the restrictions which are in place in many European countries, and which often are unlike those in Britain, mean that actual freedom to live in a country or move is in many ways greater in Britain than in most European countries. For the very simple reason that in Germany, for example, as soon as you arrive in Germany and settle in Germany, you must register. You must have identity recordings, where you are, who you are, and so on. In Britain, you'll meet people in Britain who don't even have a passport, who've never had a passport. There's no ID card in Britain. Okay. Yeah, but you don't now. That's what I'm saying. You don't now. My parents as well, they came. At the time, in 1948, I said this last week, I'll repeat again. In 1948, there were 600 million people were allowed to come to Britain under the Nationality Act at the time. Anyone who was a member of a British colony to come to Britain. My father came in that way. He was born in Malaya, a British colony. He had a British passport to come here. And so it was with India. So it was the time of the Windrush generation. And I know people came here, 1950s, from Nigeria. A friend of mine, he came. As soon as he arrived on a boat illegally, got off in Liverpool, was immediately given a job. They didn't throw him out. And I am opposed to immigration controls. And if we leave the European Union, I'm still opposed to immigration controls. Because the truth of the matter is, the central nexus around which our world moves today is not based on the national boundary. Contrary to what you're told to believe, we have global economic institutions, global corporate structures, global banking systems, and at the centre of the entire global financial system is British banks. By the way, they are also at the centre of global criminal activity through the banks. The British have got numerous, what they call tax havens, like Barbados, the Cayman Islands, Gibraltar, Jersey, where trillions and trillions of dollars move through those accounts, concealing the criminal money, conduited through them, often from the City of London. The latest scandal, the Danish bank called the Danske Bank, more than 200 billion in criminal money flowing mainly through conduits from Britain in conjunction with gangsters from Russia. And then they talk about Salisbury as this, terrible, I mean, it's a bit odd, but terrible, this Salisbury crime. And yet, the British government has systematically invited gangsters from Russia to come and live in England. I better not say it because now you've got libel laws in England, you know. But in any case, there's a guy called Leonid Blavatnik, Sir Leonid Blavatnik. He's got a place in Soho. He runs Warner Brothers Sound. And I do a walking tour, the Karl Marx walking tour. We stop outside the building because it's opposite Karl Marx's house. And they put these barriers there to stop us standing there. You know, and I called the council. The council capitulated to Sir Leonid. Why did they capitulate to him?
Because he's got money.
Because he's got 15,000 million pounds. You didn't get that in communist Russia. 15,000 million pounds. How do you get this money? You know, this morning I had the misfortune to turn on the internet, and there was something came up after one program. I was watching the Getty thing, and then something came up. It was The Apprentice. Now I haven't watched that for a while. In fact, I've never watched it really fully through, but I started watching it, and I was amazed that they just, you know, you see this group of people. I think there were 5 men and 5 women. One more disgusting than the other. All turning around on telly, and they obviously think it's okay. You go on the telly and you say, I'm trying to be Alan Sugar. No, don't say I'm trying to be. I'm going to be Alan Sugar's partner because I'm go-getting. I'm a fighter. I'm an animal. I'm a beast. I'm great.
You do it.
Makes you feel like being sick. And then the next one comes on and comes out with even more shit out of their mouths. And then the next one comes on, even more crap.
You're a racist, self-confessed racist. You believe in racism. Let go of division. Let go of it. Let go of division. Why do you want to divide humanity into different races? You're a disgrace.
I think the ambulance is coming.
You are a disgrace. Look at you. You've got nothing to say now, have you? You're just a coward.
I really don't know what you're talking about.
You believe in racism. Why do you believe in that?
Where did you get that from?
Why do you believe in that?
Where did you get
Why
that
do you
from?
believe in that concept of
Where
multiple
did you get-
races?
where did you get
Because you
that
call
from?
people racist all the time. Don't you?
Do I?
Don't you? Yeah, you incite violence towards people.
Do I?
You're a hate speecher.
Or am I?
Now you can get on with your silly talk.
I'm glad
See
you
ya.
told me what I am. That's quite. This is a sort of speaker's corner attack. It's a sort of mental terrorism. Someone comes in, bursts out, shouts out, broadcasts it on the internet, and then you think, oh, I've done my job for the day. Look at that! Look what I've done! Look at that! 60 likes, mate! 60 likes from my friends. Yeah, well, that's the way the world is. You know, now we've got speakers. You wander around speakers corner now. You got multiple cameras on people, and these cameras are getting quite a lot of views. And speakers corners amplify. You speak here now, you don't get like 100 people listening to you. You get 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000. Some of these people are getting, some of the arguments are getting 300,000 people. So any of you want to become famous, don't worry. I had a school group I was taking around the other day on a walking tour. And then this guy appeared, a famous lefty, Tariq Ali. So I said, look, I stop him on the street. I said, Tariq, there's a school group from, there's a Catholic school, mostly black kids. And I said, have a chat with them, tell them, you know, about Marx if you got time. So we gave him a quick talk on Marx, very short. And they didn't know who he was, you see. Tariq Ali is, you got to be a little bit in the know or older generation or something like that. And then I sent him a video link to him speaking, that sort of thing. And then one of the girls turned around and said, who's that guy? And I said, Tariq Ali. What's he do? I said, oh, he does a lot of television. I said, he does a lot of television program. He goes, television? She goes, oh, no, I missed my chance to become famous. Like that. And so, but now you got it, you see. You come up Speaker's Corner, you find out what place is getting all the hits, and you go over there and join the conversation. You join the argument. But I'm not bothered about the negativity, because you've got these sort of loonies come up and they want to, the Tommy Robinson supporters, these sort of people. The problem is their level is low. Their intellect is low, generally. Not all, generally quite low. And so if you argue, sorry? I'll come on to that. Don't you worry, my friend. I'll come on to it.
Do races exist?
I'll come on to it. Don't worry, my friend. You can hold me on the straight and narrow.
Here's a point, though. Do races exist?
What?
Do races exist? Biologically? That's his point he's making, right? And he has a
I
point.
don't really know what point he's making. I think he wants to make out that's the point he's making. I don't think that necessarily is the point he's making. I think it's easy to hook on to an argument where, for example, yes, you could say there's a grey area. All human beings come from hominids who apparently emerged out of Ethiopia and Tanzania. And therefore, the nationality is certainly just a sort of historical creation. And the race, well, it's specific to certain circumstances. There are some genetic relationships, but there is a crossover between the various parameters of what constitutes one race or another. There are certain familiarities with certain races. The Chinese, for example, you can trace back, where do you come from, that period or that period. But ultimately, all human beings come from Africa. And therefore, yes, it's true, if you take a generic, global historical viewpoint about what species we are, and you take a human being from 500,000 years ago and transport them to the modern age, put them in clothes and suits like you are today, they will behave as we behave. And therefore nothing fundamentally has changed in human beings. Yes, apart from their skin pigmentation and this sort of thing, these are relatively minor factors. Just to correct something I said, because someone caught me earlier on and they said to me, you said this last week, I checked it and it was right. One thing I said last week was when a man was annoying me going on about genes and their genetic pool and how genetics determine the character of a human being. And I said, sir, you share the same 99% of your genes with a fruit fly. And then I said, in your case, probably more. But then I checked on the internet, it's 61%, not 99%. So, but because Speaker's Corner is now being broadcast on a weekly basis, just as when my old man used to argue with his friends about politics at my house when I was a child, they could always argue till they're blue in the face. because we didn't have a reference material to hand to contradict each other. Now we do. Now any of you can go on the internet and check out quickly whether this is right or wrong. And therefore I have to be a bit circumspect and prepared to correct the statement I make when I make that statement and I see it on YouTube or something. No problem. And in fact, that's good for all of us, to have reference points to be able to say, is that right, is that wrong? To refer, check up, research, analyse, check. To act like children of the scientific age. Able to listen to arguments, respond to them, and do the research necessary, check the data, the facts, and therefore build up a consciousness, an understanding of the world, which facilitates transformation of that world. Next question. Are there any questions? About Brexit.
Brett Kavanaugh, should he be a judge?
What was that?
No, the Senate, the guy in America.
The American Supreme Court judge.
Innocent until proven guilty. This is how it should work, the law, right?
Well, I don't think it's quite as simple as that.
He's a communist, that's a belief.
No, on the contrary. The fact of the matter is, the reason why the issue is important is less to do with his historical behaviour and more to do with politics. No, that's true. Whether he committed the offences, which I think he probably did, whether he committed those, the question is politics. Because the Supreme Court, and this is where the whole joke comes apart. Why is it important to have this person or that person? Because contrary to what we're told, the justice and the legal system are independent. They're not independent. Justice and the legal system is designed to defend the wealth and power of the privileged. Largely, the truth of the matter is, largely, those who are privileged and in positions of authority and power, if you trace the DNA, that's the important thing, not the DNA of the individual, but the DNA of their property. You know, you have signs around, all property protected by some security sign. But if you trace the origin of the property of the wealthiest classes in the world, 8 individuals now own more wealth than half of the world's population. 150 companies in Britain own more than 70% of the stock market valuation. 780 companies control 80% of world trade. And therefore to imagine that those courts of our governments, whether in America or in Britain, the same Supreme Court conflict is emerging in Britain at the moment. The balance of power in the courts is shifting towards the right in Britain. My friend here was in a court case where I was at a little while ago. I should have won that court case in the High Court about property rights versus contract law. Property rights should, or better said, housing rights, not property rights, housing rights. The rights of the majority of people to live somewhere. That's governed by housing law and housing rights. But in my particular case, the judge who was deciding the case was the latest appointment to the High Court. And when he started talking, in fact, as soon as he started talking, it was a 2-day trial, as soon as he started talking, I thought to myself, I'm going to lose this. It wasn't about what he said. In fact, he pretended. My friend here was in the court. At the end of the first day's hearings, the judge said, we will make a decision tomorrow. But Addy came out and he said, you're going to win that, aren't you? Because he listened to the arguments. But it wasn't the arguments. The judge merely pretended to listen to the arguments. He was automatically, by his instinct, by his orientation, by his interests, going to use the law to side with the property owners. Because law in Britain, ask yourself this. You walk down the street, you see homeless people. You go, homeless, drug addict, homeless, drunk. And some of them even make money. In fact, I appreciate it when someone says, you got £1 for a pint of lager or £1 for a can of lager. I prefer that to someone, and I used to live in the middle of Soho when someone on crystal meth who's taking crystal meth in front of my window every day, when they come and tell me they want food, I'm like, the last thing you want is food, right? Although they could call it food. For them, crystal meth is food. But then when you walk down the street, you see the homeless, big issue, homeless, pound for this, pound for that, can you spare a pound? And then you walk by, I've got nowhere to stay, and you walk down the street from here to Piccadilly. I ask you to do this. When you walk, next time you walk on Oxford Street, down that way, no matter where you're walking, take 2 minutes or 5 minutes of your walking time and count. Look up, look around. How many empty buildings you see? Everywhere you look, buildings that the estate agent, that smarmy-nosed twit, sitting in a flashy office, doing nothing, with nothing, for money. What do? They come round, oh yes, we've got a lovely place for you. And then they come round with a key, open the door. Key only costs £3. They open the door and then they show you our lovely proportions, beautiful place. A flea pit. They say garden flat. Garden means basement flat, mould and damp. How much it costs to rent? 1,500, studio flat, 1,500. So you work 70% or 80% of the month on the average wage in London to pay your rent for a parasitic landlord who owns property built by an Irishman in 1850. And the Irishman's dead. And he and his family and his children and his children's children and his children's children's children still have no property of their own. And then you talk about, that's the DNA, you see. If they've got the property and they've got the key, they've got a piece of paper, or better said, an electronic record in the land registry that says that building there, see the one with the brown bricks and the little columns? I noticed actually, that's been empty 30 years, right? This is Park Lane, £350 on the Monopoly map. Yet 30 years it's been empty. 30 bloody years. Last week I noticed some people have moved in to the first floor flat. That's it. The rest of it's still empty. Quite an achievement for these aren't these supposed to be the masters of money, the geniuses who have yet Mayfair, the most expensive, £400 on the Monopoly board. Mayfair has the largest proportion of empty properties anywhere in Britain. Mayfair. So the wealthier you are, the less important it is to make money out of your money. You just buy property and you sit on it. You can't give it. In fact, some of them, I bet you, if you're clever and lucky, you can look up in the land registry and you might, if you squat one of these buildings, you might find that the owner has died. Maybe they died 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and it's been sitting there empty because everyone respects, oh my God, it's Mayfair. How could anybody open the door? How could anybody open the window? How could anybody break a window open, reach their hand in and open the window to sleep inside? Impossible! How dare anyone challenge private property? And everywhere you go, it's the same. Why are these? Come and see the man over there. He said to me, why are they now so scared about Speaker's Corner? About the people coming in, the video, YouTube, all this. Why are they so scared? And he said the bankers. Well, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's true. If you go to Canary, I went to Canary Wharf last week. You get out the tube station, and there's all these high-rise buildings, and yah. And then they're drinking cocktails and eating oysters at lunchtime. And they taste crap. I had cocktails, oysters, everything. And you wander around, they've got security guards. Wandering around like this. Ex-army. You know, we train them, get them to kill people in Iraq, Afghanistan. When they've got no balls left to kill anyone, then they put them in Canary Wharf in a suit with a little security guard sign. And they can still push people around. Right? And then How many people, like, they just kicked me out of a property in Soho after this legal case. And they put a security guard in there full time. 24 hours, a security guard sitting there, doing nothing all day long. What a waste of a human being. Not him as a human being, but what a waste of a human being. To make them walk around security guard, walk around estate agent, walk around, you know, guards, watching over what? Bouncers in a club. You know, bozos, to make it look like they're doing something important. Okay, the police do some good jobs, but they also do some stupid jobs. Totally stupid. And the powers that be, the same thing. Someone wrote to me the other day, don't put a poster up. I didn't put them up. But don't put a poster up. Don't put a poster up. People get beaten up, attacked on the street, no one does anything. You call the police, they say we can't charge them, we can't do anything. 2 guys at night come to my place, big rocks like this, chucking through my window. They're caught immediately, police can't charge them. Can't charge them because Westminster Council doesn't want to charge them. Why don't Westminster Council want to charge them? I don't know. Some reason they didn't like me. So, property is king. He who has the wealth, the power, or better said, he who has the wealth has the power. No, that doesn't mean I hate the rich. Don't mean I shout out, eat the rich. I'm trying to describe why people do what they do. And now in the newspapers today, Financial Times, highly recommended. Go over the shop there, get the Financial Times out. Look at it while you're in the shop, read the article, put it back. It's too expensive to buy. And when you read the article, you'll see 2 articles this week, indicative of what's going on. And they say, the rich are preparing to leave Britain. Not because of Brexit. They said 10 times more serious than Brexit is Jeremy Corbyn. 10 times more serious. Again, another article today. People advising the ultra wealthy. They're looking at Jersey. They're looking at Switzerland. Wherever they can run with their money. Because they fear that the Corbyn government will impose taxes, rules, regulations that will make them pay part of their money, a tiny part of their money, to pay for healthcare, welfare, social services, and the enormous transfer of wealth that has taken place since 2008, from the poor to the rich. That's what's happened. Average wages in Britain have fallen by £700. Average wages. Savings of the workers have collapsed. 60% of the population have less than £1,000 in savings. 42% of the London population less than £100 in savings. £100! And yet we're supposed to live. You can't call it living if you pay 70% of your wages in rent. You can't call it living if you can barely make it through the week. And yet that's the case even for many public sector workers, teachers, junior doctors, nurses, transport workers, workers in shops. This week you had the case. It's not happened before. McDonald's workers on strike. Big rally in Leicester Square. McDonald's workers on strike. Good. Good. Because this shoving around, this pushing around, this hierarchy of power that you enter into when you work in a workplace like that, and then you skivvy around day in, day out, minute in, minute out, this person on your back like a parasite, telling you what to do, how to do it, watching how you are, and the surveillance system from one over the other, all climbing up that slimy ladder. Get an extra £2, an extra £3 an hour, and that means you can shout at that person, you can tell them off, you can sack them, you can order them round, you can make them do this, faster, a bit faster, come on, bit faster. And then they report back to their superiors, this man here is not working that bit faster, get rid of him. And then they put you on short-term, 1-hour contracts, call you when they want. Come in now, will you? Drop everything, come in now for £7.50 an hour. No thanks. The workers in these companies must exercise their power, their muscle, their ability to paralyse the system, to show those in charge that they're not in charge. And it's the same the other way. I can tell you this. It's the same the other way around. There's an organisation just been formed called the London Renters Union. Very progressive thing. Because it means when you've got a problem with your landlord, call them up and they'll come over. And then your landlord who's coming around telling you, do this, do that, do this, do that. Next time they come around, you say, no, I'm not doing that. The law says this, the contract says this. I demand my rights too. That's all that's happened. That's all that Jeremy Corbyn represents. But it spreads the fear of God amongst the ruling class. Because they've always had it their own way. They're used to having it their own way. Their concept of life and living is that they get it their way. From birth until death. And therefore, once the dirty masses raise their little finger, begin to combine together, discuss together, fight for their rights, fight for change, then all of a sudden, the power balance is shifted. That is what Jeremy Corbyn represents. A transformation in the balance of power in society towards the many from the few. And that's not an idle slogan. It's a method by which we gain the confidence to say, this is our man, this is our programme, this is the change we want to see, and we will combine together to bring it about. That is why I say, prepare, not so much worry about the Brexit European Union. I do not agree with demanding a second referendum. I do not agree with that. I believe we need to shift the balance of power all over Europe, all over the world, and we can start in Britain. Once we get Jeremy Corbyn elected Prime Minister, and I believe that could be quite soon, you laugh, but you laugh with a smirk, which is the smirk of fear. Now, I understand that.
Please tell me, sir, what is the solution? You speak about problems, you talk about these terrible things that the rich people do to oppress
The
the poor
solution
people.
is
What's
to
the solution?
is to transform the balance of power in society.
So
I've just been talking about it. I've just been talking about it.
Other people in power.
You didn't listen to what I'm saying.
The people that he wants to put in power are
Transform.
You voted for Jeremy Corbyn. Did you
Well,
vote
you voted for the people who are in power.
Did you
right
vote for
now.
any of the CEOs that he talks about? You didn't vote for any of them.
CEOs are private companies. You don't vote for
Yeah,
them.
exactly.
Well,
They achieve
but my
power
friend,
sometimes by
my friend.
questionable means, but they achieve that power not by voting.
Well, but the point,
Choosing
whether they
different people in power
got that,
will not change
my
the
friend,
CEOs.
whether they got that power.
Driving the economy,
Let me try and answer you.
making the state
Let me
drive
try and
the
answer
economy
you.
is what you're proposing.
Well, the gentleman here just suggested something to you. I agree with that. Your answer, however, didn't reveal an understanding of what was being said.
Really?
Yes, because you
Part
said,
of my answer does not reveal
I'm answering you. I'm going to explain to you. One, you said, yes, you vote Jeremy Corbyn or you don't vote Jeremy Corbyn, but you don't vote the CEOs. Now, that's true. Does it mean you should never be able to vote the CEOs? Does it mean that the workers, as Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell proposed at the Labour Party conference, should have a percentage of the shares, should be a third of the members of the board, that the workers will gain power over corporate power? And that's what I mean by reorganising the balance of power. And that, my friend, is not a national question, it's an international question. We live in an international economic order, an international capitalist system, an international banking system, an international division of labour. Everything that we wear or we use or we buy is produced from the labour of people all around the world.
How do you propose to force the CEOs to just leave their power?
The law.
Law.
Well,
Yeah.
Law to grab the economy by the balls.
well, you're right in
That's
this.
what you propose.
You're right in this. We will propose law.
Socialism, because it
We
worked
will.
so well in the
Let me try and
past.
answer you. We will
Please
propose.
answer me.
I'm trying to. We will propose laws to change these things. However, you are right to be sceptical of that, not because it can't work because it's socialist or because somehow that's a monstrosity. It's because the interests of those with wealth and power are inextricably connected to the legal system. The upper layers of the police, the upper layers of the judiciary, that's when it comes back to the question of the Supreme Court. Because the Supreme Court in America and the Supreme Court in England inevitably leans towards property.
and the interests of property. And in fact, property, if you have a limited company, you can set up a limited company while I'm speaking. It costs you £15. You set it up online there and then. Sorry? Well, it's a company's house. You go on companieshouse.gov.uk, you go on there, you set up a limited company. But the limited company is treated like a human being by the court. Like a human being, except a human being. No, you can judge them by what they say and so on. A company is assumed to be telling the truth. What right does a company, in other words, a piece of paper that you set up for £15, why should you assume it's telling the truth?
Well, honestly, nobody assumes they're telling the truth.
Well, I'm explaining to you what I think. What I think. Yeah. My friend. Look, Pret-a-Manger is over there. This week it was revealed 2 people have been killed by Pret-a-Manger. Is anyone from Pret-a-Manger on a charge with the police? Is there even an investigation? No!
How were they killed?
Last year, a year and a half ago, Grenfell Tower burnt down. On the day it was burnt down, we knew what caused. We'll come back to that in 1 second. On the day it was burnt down, my friend, you didn't bother to follow the news story. Please do so. Don't drag that up now. We'll come back. Check the news story. Right? Grenfell Tower burnt down. When that burnt down, everyone could see on the first day, while it was still burning, something is wrong with the cladding. That day, I looked up how that cladding was built, what company built it. I went round to various properties which had the same cladding, some in Maida Vale by the canal, some in Battersea. I went round to these buildings and I asked the people, I told them, have you been informed? Is there any protection offered to you? Nothing had been done. And to this day, they've had an inquiry, a lot of solemn talk, and still people from that building, 79 people killed. Still they haven't housed the people. And yet, opposite Grenfell Tower, within 1 mile, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of empty properties. Kept empty by the wealthiest people in Britain, in one of the wealthiest areas of Britain. And yet to this day, not one person has been arrested or charged with what happened in Grenfell Tower. Not one person, because they shift the buck. Oh, it's not this, it's some decision there, and that person made the decision there, and that person made the decision there. So nobody is blamed. And that's how the corporate world gets away. I used to know some friends of mine, they used to publish a journal. I think it was called London Labour News or something like that. And every week in there they had reports by the coroner's office. Workers who died in London that week. And you would have been horrified, absolutely horrified to read what's in there. I remember one distinctly. A worker working in a lift shaft. The metal ropes that pull up and down broke, fell down, sliced his head off. Sliced his head off. These are standard occurrences in workplaces. And yet, nobody gets charged. And even if there were, it's corporate manslaughter. It's only a minor charge against the company directors. How many times did he get charged? Hardly ever. Because companies are considered to be above the law. The law is there to protect them. So the gentleman here talked to Pret-a-Manger, allergy. They knew about these allergies. The point is, they couldn't give a shit. Because nobody's going to get caught on it. I guarantee you, nobody will be charged at Pret-a-Manger. Even though they should have labelled it. Another one came out today, the yogurt. The yogurt containing materials that should have been advertised on that weren't.
How socialist would you say you are? Like if you were playing your, I know you've just been speaking, I just came in.
That's fine.
In your utopia, would you be like?
I believe the largest companies in Britain and in every country in the world should be publicly owned. They should be democratically controlled, including the banks. And the banks should be utilities serving the people. We shouldn't really pay. To be honest with you, I don't believe we should pay rent at all. But to start with, I believe we should only pay the rent necessary for the maintenance and reproduction of the buildings. Later, as we make available the empty spaces that there are in Britain and London alone, enough to house everybody in mansions. Once we achieve that level of development, then we can reduce the rents below the cost of maintenance.
Okay, so if
Electricity and gas, every
who pays
month.
the house owner?
Sorry?
Who will pay the people who actually own the houses? If
The
you don't pay
reason
rent?
why
Well, that's the
most
thing
of the
about socialism.
landlords
You promised a
who
lot
are
of free
renting
stuff,
properties
but
out,
this money needs to come from somewhere.
Yes.
Free healthcare comes from more taxes. Free education comes from more taxes. All
free
this
housing,
stuff is
or
not
better
free.
said, low-cost
It's on the back
housing,
of the workers that you
low-cost
promised to
housing,
protect.
don't forget, is not a new idea. In 1945 to 1948, Britain built 1 million homes a year. 1 million homes a year. You know how many we build now? About 200,000. 200,000. But that was after the Second World War, when Britain was bankrupt. We could build 1 million homes a year.
When there were lots of homes destroyed by the Second World War.
My friend,
Destroyed by the
my friend,
bombings,
it's
when
far
nobody had where to
easier,
live.
far easier to provide homes for everybody now.
Yes, it is.
One, we live in a time of fantastic technical development. The consequence of that is mistakes of the past, for example, or problems of the past. You know when they built tower blocks, the reason you can't really get a mortgage on a tower block is because the concrete degenerates. And so it's got a life of maybe 20, maybe 30, 40 years, maybe 50 years. And then the concrete degenerates. But now you have nanotechnology whereby you implant into the concrete a sort of bug, a nano bug. And this nano bug, when it rains on the concrete, this bug shits concrete, fresh concrete. And therefore it maintains the integrity of the concrete
How interesting.
for generations after generations.
Right, you're saying there's a nano machine that.
Yes, there are nano bugs. They already have them. It's already developed several years ago.
It's a cool
Now-
I'd love to see this.
Just look. If you look up. If you look up. No, there's the person I learnt this from is a professor at UCL, and she has something called the Institute of Learning.
How do you feel about immigration?
About what?
How do you feel about immigration?
I welcome immigration. My parents are both immigrants, and the thing I love about, the only reason I live in London actually, is because it's a multicultural society more than any other I've lived in. And I appreciate that most of all, because it adds to the fluidity, it adds to the knowledge, it adds to the culture, it makes us more human to see the world around us, rather than a load of white skins or just a load of black skins. It means we get to know the whole world and we learn from each other. And yes, it does however mean that in times of crisis like we've got now, you get reactionaries screaming, too many immigrants, Sharia law is coming, we've got to stop them. They're all paedophile gangs from Pakistan, all the Muslims, you know, Tommy Robinson and his fans. And on the other side, you do have some people, sort of fanatical lunatic brigade, the Taliban and the Osama bin Laden and IS supporters, Osama bin Laden. And they'll come here and they'll shout out, Sharia law, you know, bring in Sharia law. And they'll think they're winning 5 people by standing, and then a white girl come along and they run after her. Paradise, we can show you how to get there. You know, the truth of the matter is, as in all religions, as in all belief systems like that, there are many corrupt people at the top.
Yes.
You know, the idea that the IS is some pure state. Anybody who ever went out there, you see the people come back, they say, well, not what I thought it was. You know, they may suddenly believe that in prison they got problem with drugs or whatever, get recruited to the IS, and then suddenly they come out of prison, they get dragged down to Speaker's Corner, and they argue with some guy, Sunni and Shia arguing the other day, they wanted to fight each other. What's beautiful here, and I saw it this morning, was wandering around making my radio show. There were two Jewish guys over there with a funny little bob on their head, with this black outfit, right? Arguing with a Muslim guy, arguing with a Christian guy. That's a good thing. That's the beauty of Speaker's Corner. That's what allows us not only to be children of the scientific age, but global children of the scientific age. And the fact that we have people from all around the world enables Britain to act as an instigator of change around the world. I believe that could be only a good thing.
In the last video, you said that the far right is on the rise. Now, yeah, I'm not denying that. It is on the rise in Europe. But I wouldn't say so that much in Britain. There are Islamophobes, but it's nothing against anyone's race. It's more about culture and kind of, you know, people who are a little bit hardcore and a little culty.
Now, I know Tommy Robinson has taken a very careful aim at what he calls the Islamic fundamentalists in order to make out he's not a racist and to make out that it's like just a fear of what happened to his community in Luton. Now, you know, any community anywhere, in fact, in particular the Muslim community, if you want to find a group of people who have suffered from abuse in the last 10 years, in fact, since 2001, you couldn't look anywhere further, or you shouldn't look any further than the Muslim community. Every time any action happened by lunatic brigades within the Islamic fundamentalists, for example, they blow up the buses in Edgware Road in Russell Square and Tube in Edgware Road and so on. The moment that happened, completely innocent Muslims are attacked on the streets. Right? So they are the most attacked people in Britain. And the truth of the matter is, contrary to the idiocy from Tommy Robinson, he goes, Pakistani Muslim grooming gang. I've been to Pakistan. And when you go to Pakistan, you know what the truth of the matter is? The Pakistani people are the main victims, as are the Syrians, as are the Iraqis, as are the Afghans of the Islamic fundamentalists. And of the murderers, the terrorists, they get most of it. When I was in Pakistan, one bomb after another in Pakistan. Kids trained up by Saudi-financed militias to go out on the street, to chain kids, to go out and blow themselves up in a marketplace in the middle of Lahore or in the middle of Karachi. Completely innocent people, Muslims being blown up. So this nonsense about the Muslim fundamentalists are out to get us. Most of the Muslim fundamentalists are in Pakistan or Afghanistan or Syria or in Iraq, these type of areas. Generally places, if you trace the DNA of the origin of these conflicts, you'll find Britain, France, America, its allies, Pakistan, the intelligence services of Pakistan, the Saudi Arabian government. They're behind it all.
How do you feel about Saudi Arabia?
Saudi Arabia is a bastard state.
Have you ever read a book called Everyone's Lying About Islam?
I haven't.
Mo Freedom Foundation, do you know who he is?
No, I haven't, but now you say it, I'm sure people will look up.
Sorry, I see.
No, it's fine, I haven't read. But Saudi Arabia, you see, you know, when the Soviet Union used to spend money promoting its ideas, you know, you land in Moscow airport, you'd be, you know, some books about Lenin. And then you'd see in Britain various shops and institutes were sort of promoting the Soviet ideal. The Saudis spent much more than the Soviets did on promoting Wahhabism, promoting this brand of Islamic fundamentalism, which basically strengthens the male against the women and gives them this sort of mindset that they can conquer anything, that they can become somebody, a hero. So kids from the East End, some of them watching a video, they're going to join these maniacs. But the problem is not with Islam, it's not with Muslim religion, It's not with the East End. It's the global intercommunication of human beings that has happened in the last 20 years at a pace never before in history. And there are negative consequences. It means that when someone, for example, when the Columbine killing happened, it made the television. And then someone copycatted elsewhere. But now you've got internet. Someone kills 5 people, 20 people, 50 people with a machine gun. Some other person around the world finds out about it and copies that. This is the world we live in. There isn't actually that much we can do about that, apart from change the overall culture and seek to bring together, rather than divide people like the identitarians and Tommy Robinson want to do, divide us off by culture, or supposed culture, or lack of culture in Tommy Robinson's case. Rather than that, what we need to do is find the ways to integrate people across the entire planet. And I believe the fastest route to that is through the simple facts of what we do. This is why Marx's ideas are brilliant. He explained what we do with our hands and our brains ultimately is who we are. And therefore, if you unite together the working people of the world to change the balance of power, reorganize the world in the interest of the people, of the majority of the people, then we can bring about a global transformation. Can start in one country and spread to the entire world. And believe you me, the world is ripe for change from the base to transform society. After all, wasn't the real surprise of the last American election the appearance out of nowhere of Bernie Sanders, speaking to rallies of tens and hundreds of thousands of people across the United States, calling for revolutionary change. We need such revolutionary change today more than ever. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Free stuff for everybody.
Lots of people have free stuff, my friend. Nothing so unusual about that.
Come take away everything from your humanity. Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
You're talking about gang, so you agree that gang is a brilliant thing for all colour youth.
Yeah, I agree that it's a good thing for all the youth. I agree with that. But that's something different from what he's doing. That's something different from what he's doing. His thing's different.
But his thing's not gang.
Yeah, I know it's not. But that's what I'm saying. You're conflating the issues because we're having a separate discussion before he.
You were talking about gang.
Before he came. No. We're conflating issues. It wasn't exclusively about gang. That was.
No, that's fine.
That's fine. Actually.
That's fine. But you brought up gang. You explained.
The only reason that gang came up is because we were speaking about the police.